So there's a very interesting report that is coming out here. Apparently, the Las Vegas Raiders are working with running back Ashton Jeanty to get his stance fixed prior to the start of training camp, prior to preseason, and ultimately prior to the actual NFL season starting. And apparently the Raiders are very, very invested in making sure Ashton Jeanty's stance is fixed. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Ashton Jeanty has went viral multiple times on social media because the guy stands straight up in his stance. If you guys look at this video here, he's literally standing up straight right before he gets the football. And you can see that he does this multiple times. In fact, I'm going to just let this play. I'll stop it right before each handoff so you guys can kind of see. Here's another one. He's standing straight up, completely different run. And you'll see multiple plays like this with Ashton Jeanty. Before he gets the ball, just stand straight up. And apparently the Raiders want Ashton Jeanty to fix his stance. And apparently he's been practicing already as he's gotten into the NFL, specifically over rookie minicamp. You can see a couple of these images where before he gets the football, he does have his hands on his knees. He is bent over. And again, this is something that he's apparently working on. So it is going to be interesting to see if he can fully fix it before the season comes around. And then how often does he go back to the old stance, just out of habit? If you guys don't know the difference between the actual stance where he's standing straight up versus having his hands into the ground and why it kind of matters, not into the ground, but like just being lower, right? And why it ultimately matters is if you're standing straight up, you have less explosiveness than if you're bent over. And it might not matter as much if you're running like inside zone or power plays towards the inside, because generally speaking, on inside runs or power runs, the quarterback's going to take the ball. He's going to take one or two steps before he hands it off to the running back. The reason why it matters for the Raiders is because we're going to run a lot of outside zone, right? So what that means is the quarterback and running back will meet like 3-4 yards to the left or 3 or 4 yards to the right when Ashton Jeanty gets that football, right? And it's important that this guy explodes out of his stance as he takes that football. And I do think being a little bit lower allows you to just naturally explode out of it, right? But I do understand in the NFL, it's all about the steps you're taking. It's all about, if it's outside zone, where you're taking the handoff from the quarterback. All of that stuff is pre-designed, You're not going to just go out there and like, everybody just freely kind of does whatever. And as offensive lineman, you just freely block whoever. Like, it doesn't work like that. Every single thing that happens out there, there's rules. Quarterback, if it's an outside zone, has to take a certain angle. If you have a 3 technique and you're a right guard and right tackle and it's outside zone, there's a way you handle that, right? If you switch the play to the other side, there's a way you handle that, right? So it will be interesting to see the Raiders as kind of go forward and how this guy's able to get that stance fully adjusted. And some people have also talked like, will this actually impact him? Right? Would the stance change make a difference? I don't think it will, to be honest. I don't think it makes all that much of a difference, but I do think it makes a slight difference. And I do think for the Raiders, it does make sense to have that stance corrected. Now, I'll also just kind of throw this out there. If that stance is the difference between this guy having 2,000 yards and like 4.3 yards and only like 1,200 yards, let the guy have his old stance and then just switch your entire scheme back. Run inside zone, run power plays to the inside. And do what fits Ashton Jeanty, because we know what this guy can do for the Raiders. In fact, Jackson Powers-Johnson talked a little bit about Ashton Jeanty as well. And I want you guys to listen to what this guy had to say about Ashton Jeanty, because it kind of fires me up to hear a guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson, the tape that guy puts out there. To hear him say this about Ashton Jeanty kind of fires me up. Check this out, and then we'll talk about this on the other side.
Everything is true about what they're saying about this guy. I mean, he's just a ball of muscle. And like when I dapped him up, gave him a hug, like it was pure metal. His speed, his agility, how he likes to play. He plays fun. He likes to have fun. And I think that's going to make him so deadly. He loves to block. Like that's a lineman's dream. He's a great guy, and he's gonna have such a great year, and I'm excited to block for him.
So Jackson Powers-Johnson, the guy that's built completely different than most normal people, is saying that Ashton Jeanty is built differently. That's kind of crazy to think. That's kind of crazy to hear. But the Raiders superstar center is talking about Ashton Jeanty, saying he's just a ball of muscle. He's saying he plays fun. He likes to have fun, and he's gonna have such a great year. And he's excited to block for Ashton Jeanty. This year for the Raiders is going to be, I think, a lot different than past years. not only have we invested on the offensive side, but we've added explosive playmakers. You could make the argument over the past 2 years, the Raiders added the best running back and the best tight end over the past 2 years, right? And those guys are both going to be top 5 players at their positions for the next 5 years. But this year, I think both guys will also continue to have impacts, right? Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders offense kind of goes as we go forward. I'm not surprised that Jackson Powers Johnson is saying what he's saying about Ashton Jeanty, because if you guys followed the draft and Ashton Jeanty specifically pre-draft, I mean, this guy's a very, very high character. He puts the effort in. He works out. This guy had multiple offers to go away from Boise State this past season, and he could have made multiple, $2, $3, $4, $5 million to transfer and go play somewhere else, and he decided not to. He decided, I'd rather play for Boise State, right? I've already been in this offense for 2 years now. His second year, he said, he had a lot of success. He decided to stay with that team, and obviously it ended up paying off, and he became the 6th overall pick. But that just kind of shows you that this guy loves football, right? Skipping out on the NIL money and staying at Boise State for that 3rd year obviously paid off for him. And with Jackson Powers Johnson saying what he's saying, I'm not surprised. That's what the scouting report says as well, right? I want to go ahead and switch focus, man. I want to switch focus. I want to wrap this video up talking about 2 more things. I spent some time on Reddit and, I'll check out the Raiders forum. And one of the interesting things that someone posted here was this post here where it got a lot of likes. A lot of people are giving their feedback and commenting. But this guy was basically asking the question, is there any hope for Tyree Wilson? Tyree Wilson was not a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick. This guy was the 7th overall pick in a very, very, very good draft. All right, or at least early on, there's, some of the defensive linemen that have come out of that draft look really, really, really good. And this guy asks a very, very interesting question, and more than that, he makes a good point. He says that he was watching Maxx Crosby's podcast called The Rush, and he says, I can't help but notice how Tyree Wilson is never mentioned as being part of the defensive line cult, as Maxx Crosby has called it, or even mentioned when they talk about guys who put that extra time to get better. He said, last night I was watching the Koonce episode, and at one point they're talking about D-line guys that don't want to listen to his advice and think they have it all figured out. In one particular bit, he says something about a guy can't just rely on strength and bull rushing because offensive linemen will use tactics that easily take them out of the play. To me, it feels like Tyree is who he is mainly talking about. So obviously what this guy is kind of saying, he's trying to sum up some of what was said on the Rush podcast, right? That's Maxx Crosby's podcast. He had Malcolm Koonce on 2 days ago, and they talked about multiple things, right? And we're going to talk about something Malcolm Koonce said here in a second as well that I kind of found interesting. But is there hope for Tyree Wilson? One of the things I would never do is lie to you guys, right? I think that's one of the things I told myself a couple years back that, if it's a bad pick, if I don't agree with the pick, if I don't think a guy's a good football player, I'm going to stick with it and I'm going to call it out, right? I feel like I've watched enough draft prospects come out. I've believed in enough guys. I believed in traits specifically with enough guys, and sometimes it works out, right? And Tyree Wilson's a guy that I feel like, just kind of going back and looking at his tape from college to his first year in the NFL, now to his second year in the NFL, not much has changed for Tyree Wilson. This guy hasn't developed a whole lot. Right. And I think at some point you have to realize a guy's just not it. Right. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to give Tyree Wilson year 3 and year 4 and however long it takes to potentially develop. But generally speaking, you know what a guy is in year 1 or 2. By year 2, if a guy hasn't taken that leap, and I understand Tyree Wilson missed that camp his rookie year. So technically year 2 is kind of his first year in terms of having that camp and offseason. But the guy really didn't show anything his second year either, right? And what I mean by that specifically when I say he didn't really show anything is he didn't show any pass rush technique. He didn't show any pass rush upside, right? As Maxx Crosby and Malcolm Koonce were talking about guys that only have a bull rush. When I was at the Hula Bowl, there were a couple of defensive linemen I was talking to, and one of the guys asked me what he thought I personally, he asked me what I think personally works when it comes to defensive linemen. This is a defensive tackle specifically that was coming out. He got picked up as a UDFA, and I told this guy, I said, if you only have a bull rush, you're not going to make the NFL. You're not going to have success in the NFL, right? It's so easy to predict specifically defensive tackles and defensive linemen, generally speaking. if you only have a bull rush, you only have a power move, you're only relying on your power to go through guys, it's not going to work in the NFL. Every single guy in the NFL is strong. The best guys are the guys with technique. It's why literally after Malcolm Koonce's first preseason with the Raiders, literally 3-4 games in preseason with the Raiders, I said Malcolm Koonce is special. There was a tweet I put out, I believe after 1 or 2 preseason games. I said, Chandler Jones better watch out. Malcolm Koonce might take his job. And Malcolm Koonce, to me, you just saw it. He looked really, really, really good. Pass rush technique is something that could be applied to the run game. It's something that obviously allows you to have success as a pass rusher. And with Tyree Wilson, he just hasn't shown anything, right? This guy only utilizes the power. And here's the thing. You can look at a guy like Tyree Wilson and compare him to a guy like Trayvon Walker, right? Trayvon Walker and Tyree Wilson are two different types of players. They are both power-based guys. They're both a lot bigger than most people out there. You put those two guys in, among a defensive line room, those two guys stand out right away, right? They're just bigger than everybody. But the one big difference between Trayvon Walker and Tyree Wilson that allows Trayvon Walker to have success is Trayvon Walker is actually really, really, really fast, right? He's quick. He has a really, really good get off. And that's part of why he was the first overall pick, right? Tyree Wilson doesn't have that get off and he's never really developed it. I'm not out on Tyree Wilson because a guy can always develop, but just kind of comparing Tyree to Trayvon, you definitely see the differences. Right now, I have very, very little hope that Tyree Wilson's going to develop. Again, I'm not giving up on him, right? We'll see if he can actually prove himself out there, but chances are Tyree Wilson's going to be a bust. Chances are he's going to bust out, and he'll never end up being worth that 7th overall pick. To me, I think Dave Ziegler made a mistake drafting Tyree Wilson, and I will stick with that opinion as long as, it is, right? It is what it is, but hopefully Tyree Wilson does develop, and for him to develop, he only has to develop one counter. I was talking to these guys at the Hula Bowl. One of the things that we talked about, the guy was telling me, hey, I love the bull rush. I love to utilize the fork technique, right? So an offensive lineman strikes. The fork means you're going to get your hand underneath the elbow. Offensive lineman strikes, you lift that up, right? And that allows you to get into a bull rush. And he did a really good job. It was something I actually noticed while watching him at the Hula Bowl, and I told him that specifically. But I also told him that the bull rush only takes you so far. You got to have one counter to the bull rush. And, it could be a bull rush to a potential club move, right? You get that arm, you just club a guy maybe underneath the armpit area. It could be a swipe move, the way Jalen Carter has, right? Jalen Carter has a swim move. He has the hezzy club, the hezzy swipe. And it's a part of what makes him really, really good. He just keeps guys guessing, right? And for Tyree Wilson to be good, he has a great bull rush, but he has to add a counter to that bull rush. So if he's able to do that, he'll be a good football player. If he can't, I think he'll bust out for the Raiders. Not saying I don't think Tyree Wilson will play 10 years, right? Some team will always pick him up because he was a top 10 pick. Kind of like Cleveland Farrell, who's still in the NFL, right? He's like year 7 or 8. Anyways, let's go ahead and switch focus. Let's talk a little bit about Malcolm Koonce to wrap this video up. I say Malcolm Koonce was such an easy prospect to see that this guy was going to be a really, really good football player. And I don't say that I don't say that to brag or say it lightly. It's easy to predict these guys, right? It really, really, really is. Now, I don't watch every player out there, right? I don't watch every team's player. I watch a lot of guys, but I don't watch every player, right? But sometimes you can just see Malcolm Koonce, you just know he's going to be good. Jonathan Grenard was a very, very, very easy guy to see early on that this guy has potential. There's guys even right now, right? Like Austin Booker as an example with the Chicago Bears. There's a good chance he's going to be a top 10 defensive end, right? Real chance that Austin Booker ends up being that guy. I think it was a 4th or 5th round pick this past season coming out of Kansas. The guy has an elite pass rush. You can see guys right now like the guy that the Buffalo Bills drafted out of Arkansas, Landon Jackson. He's going to be a really good football player, right? You just know it. You just see it. With Malcolm Koonce, we knew that as well. And Malcolm Koonce said something in the Maxx Crosby podcast where he said that he was basically 100% focused on coming back to the Raiders in free agency. This guy did not want to leave the Raiders at all. In fact, I'm going to read you guys exactly what this guy said. Malcolm Koonce said the following: the draft is stressful because you don't know where you're going to go. Free agency is like your mini draft that nobody knows what's going on but you, your agent, and maybe your family and stuff like that. I knew I wanted to come back to the Raiders. I knew I wanted to play with you guys again. So my agent would say, team X, Y, and Z is interested. And I'd be like, well, what did the Raiders say? He'd say, these people are offering you this amount of money. And I'd be like, have you checked with the Raiders in the last couple of days? So, it seems like Malcolm Koonce was 100% invested in the Raiders. When he signed that $12 million contract, I want you guys to think about this. This is a guy who had a 9-game breakout. Only 9 games. He got $12 million. He got more money than Josh Jacobs got by playing 9 games. And that's over the course of his career, essentially. Right? The Raiders gave this guy $12 million because that's the type of potential and upside he showed. But I guarantee you guys, Malcolm Koonce had other offers from other teams that would probably paid him north of 12. I think there's a good chance some team would have taken him. Hey, we'll give you $30 million. We'll give you $45 million over 3 years potentially. I think there's a real chance a team would have preferred to lock in a guy like Malcolm Koonce, because if he does hit form, or get back to form, get back to what he was back in that 9-game stretch of the 2023 season. If Koonce gets back to that guy and you have him locked in 3 years, $15 million a year, that's a huge steal, right? There's a real chance Malcolm Koonce, if he gets back to his form, is going to get north of $25 million, right? I think there's a real chance he's going to end up getting that. In those 9 games, the pace he was on was literally better than Maxx Crosby's pace. And remember, that was the first time he played basically as a full-time starter, right? He came in his rookie year. He came in his second year. And in his second year, Josh McDaniels came in, went all in on Chandler Jones. And then, with that, we had Chandler Jones, we had Maxx Crosby for a year, which was second year for Malcolm Koonce. Year 3 for Malcolm Koonce, he was once again a bench player. For whatever reason, Josh McDaniels did not want to play this guy. And once McDaniels got fired, they basically said Koonce is a full-time starter at that point. And once Koonce became a full-time starter and he started playing those snaps, the guy kind of took off. And I think for the Raiders, you're in a really, really, really good spot with that defensive line. Now, obviously, Malcolm Koonce does have to be fully healthy, but don't overlook the fact that this guy got hurt very, very early on in the process. All right, this guy didn't get hurt like week 16 of the NFL season. He got hurt literally a week before the season actually begun. So he's already had surgery. He already probably started working out at some point in the season. He probably had a legit offseason, right? A normal offseason, I should say. He's probably 100% healthy out there. He's probably getting back to form. I think there's a real chance Malcolm Koonce is going to start week 1 and be a full-time starter, play all the snaps, and I think he'll be back to form, right? Again, the injury happened very, very early on in the process. And he actually, or I should say, Maxx Crosby actually talked a little bit about how the injury essentially happened, which is some cool insight as well. Max said, just the raw motion of how it kind of went down. Malcolm is coming off the best season you've had. You're having an incredible offseason, incredible training camp. And this was like right before we go and play the Chargers. Maxx Crosby said this was the last padded practice a couple days before the game. And we were on the indoor field. Malcolm takes one step and tears his ACL, Maxx Crosby said. He said it happened so fast, we were like, what the F just happened? He goes down on the field, and just from my perspective, our standpoint, seeing that, I've never seen a group of guys, and our D-line, we're so close. We're all effed up. Robbie Leonard is probably going to get mad. I said this, Robbie was effing in tears. We were all effed up. So, interestingly, the injury happened on the indoor field. Now, I don't know if that's already kind of been out there. I don't remember if that was out there early on. To me, that's the first time I had actually heard that it was on the indoor practice field. Do note, indoor practice field is turf, right? So, it's unfortunate that Malcolm did end up getting hurt on turf, but, it is higher chances that you're going to end up tearing an ACL on turf because turf is tougher than actual grass. When you put your foot in the ground, you change direction. In grass, your feet slide. On turf, your feet get stuck, right? And that's how those ACL injuries end up happening. But it is interesting, right? Maxx Crosby kind of puts it out there. I am excited for the Raiders defensive line, right? I do think the Raiders defensive line this year is going to be a lot better than what we've seen in past years. I think last year was the year that our defensive line was going to break records, right? We had Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler, Maxx Crosby, and then obviously at that point it was a healthy Malcolm Koonce. Didn't work out the way we thought it would have. Malcolm goes down pretty quickly. Christian goes out like week 4 or 5. Max, 4 or 5 weeks after that. Our defensive line was not healthy at all last year, but if they're healthy this year, that defensive line will be very, 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 very good. So I hope it works out. We'll see what ends up happening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys all have a great weekend. And I'll see you guys next time with another video.